Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi attends East Asia Summit in Lao PDR, says security and stability of South China Sea is in interest of entire Indo-Pacific region. Fresh Israeli airstrike hit central Beirut. World leaders condemn attack on UN peacekeepers in South Lebanon. Kremlin confirms leaders of 24 countries and the UN General Secretary to attend the BRICS Summit starting October 22nd. And South Sudan is facing worst flooding in decades. UN says nearly 900,000 people affected due to floods. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended the 19th East Asia Summit in Laos. During his address, Prime Minister Modi extended condolences to the countries who have been impacted by Typhoon Yagi. Prime Minister Modi noted India's assistance in providing humanitarian aid through Operation Sadbhav. Also, Prime Minister emphasized on ASEAN unity and centrality. He reiterated India's interest in peace, security and stability of the South China Sea. He called for free, open, inclusive and prosperous Indo-Pacific. Prime Minister Modi said that maritime activities should be conducted under UNCLOS. He noted that focus should be on development and not expansionism. On our screens, we have the highlights of the Prime Minister's participation at the 19th East Asia Summit. Prime Minister noted India's support for ASEAN unity and centrality. He reiterated India's interest in peace, security and stability in the South China Sea. Also, the Prime Minister said that maritime activities should be conducted under UNCLOS. The Prime Minister also noted that focus should be on development and not expansionism. He also noted India's support for ASEAN approach on the situation in Myanmar. Prime Minister said that countries of Global South are facing most negative impact of the ongoing conflicts. He also called for peace and stability to be restored as soon as possible. Prime Minister Modi said that this is not the era of war. He reiterated that problems cannot be solved on the battlefield. On the sidelines of the East Asia Summit, Prime Minister Modi also met the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Prime Minister Modi extended condolences to the US over the loss of lives due to Hurricane Milton in Florida. The Prime Minister also congratulated Prime Minister of Laos for organizing this summit. All right, so on your screens, we have the gist of Prime Minister's participation at the 19th East Asia Summit. Also, on the sidelines of the summit, Prime Minister Modi met US Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Vientiane. Also, Prime Minister extended condolences to the US over the loss of lives due to Hurricane Milton in Florida. Earlier on Thursday, Prime Minister took part in an ASEAN summit where he presented a 10-point plan for boosting tourism and green energy, among other areas of cooperation. DD India's Meghna Dev reports from Laos capital Vientiane.
Calling the upcoming century the Asian century, Prime Minister Modi highlighted the fintech sector gaining ground in ASEAN countries, joint defense exercises, increase in direct flight connectivity, and scholarships to ASEAN students. The joint statement highlighted the support for full and effective implementation of the Declaration on the Conduct of the Parties in South China Sea and the early conclusion of an effective and substantive code of conduct in the South China Sea.
हम एक दूसरे के पड़ोसी हैं, ग्लोबल साउथ के साथी सदस्य हैं और विश्व में तेज गति से ग्रो करने वाला क्षेत्र है। हम शांतिप्रिय देश हैं, एक दूसरे की राष्ट्रीय अखंडता और संप्रभुता का सम्मान करते हैं और अपने युवाओं के उज्जवल भविष्य के प्रति हम कमिटेड हैं। मेरा मानना है कि 21वीं सदी एशियन सेंचुरी भारत और आसियान देशों की सेंचुरी है। आज जब विश्व के कई हिस्सों में संघर्ष और तनाव की स्थिति है, तब भारत और आसियान की मित्रता, समन्वय, संवाद और सहयोग बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है।
मोदी जी, आपका लाओस में हार्दिक स्वागत है।
On his arrival, Prime Minister Narendra Modi received a grand community reception where loud children chanted Sanskrit shlokas and loud women performed bihu as well as greeted Prime Minister Modi in Hindi.
Very happy to perform. So it was not so tough and a little bit tough, but because of Modi we can do anything and anytime. It was so happy moment for us. Also for the team, they're very happy to perform in front of. And when Modi ji said like once more, it's like I got the world,
Prime Minister Narendra Modi witnessed an episode of Lav Ramayan called Phalak Phalam. The Archaeological Survey of India, involved in restoring the Wat Pho temple, presented the progress of work done to Prime Minister Modi. He also participated in a blessing ceremony by senior Buddhist monks in Central Buddhist Fellowship Organizations of Lao PDR. Meghna Dev's report for DD India.
Prime Minister Modi witnessed the exhibition on the restoration and conservation of Wat Pho Temple Complex done by the Archaeological Survey of India in Laos. The Wat Pho Temple Complex, a UNESCO World Heritage Site which is being restored and conserved by the ASI, is believed to be over 1,000 years old. The Champasak cultural landscape stretches from the sacred mountain of Linga Parvata to the Mekong River. The Wat Pho site was originally built as a Hindu temple complex in the early 11th century. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken reaffirmed Washington's commitment to supporting ASEAN centrality during the ASEAN-U.S. Summit on Friday. Blinken also reiterated the nation's stance on supporting freedom of navigation and overflight in the Indo-Pacific, and also stressed on the importance of maintaining stability in the Taiwan Strait.
From the deepening crisis in Myanmar, to the DPRK's destabilizing behavior, to Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine, which continues to violate principles at the heart of the United Nations Charter and at the heart of ASEAN's Treaty of Amity and Cooperation. We remain concerned about China's increasingly dangerous and unlawful actions in the South and East China Seas, which have injured people and harmed vessels from ASEAN nations, and contradict commitments to peaceful resolution of disputes. The United States will continue to support freedom of navigation and freedom of overflight in the Indo-Pacific. We also believe it's important to maintain our shared commitment to protect stability across the Taiwan Strait. But whether it's responding to urgent global challenges or advancing the shared hopes of our people, the relationship between the United States and ASEAN will continue to be essential.
Up next, we take a look at the highlights from Prime Minister Modi's first day in Lao PDR, where the Prime Minister met world leaders, saw a special Ramayana program, and also interacted with the Indian community. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Lao PDR in Myeongchun to attend the 19th East Asia Summit, the 21st ASEAN-India Summit. And also, talking of the East Asia Summit, the Prime Minister also talked of India's viewpoints with regard to the Indo-Pacific, and also the Prime Minister also held bilateral meetings with various world leaders, and he was also accorded a heartwarming welcome when he arrived in Lao PTR. He was welcomed with rendition in Sanskrit, he was welcomed with smiling faces, and the beautiful welcome the Prime Minister received in Lao PTR. The Prime Minister was also witness to the Bihu dance there, and the participants there presenting the rendition of Ramayana in front of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister attended the 19th East Asia Summit in Vientiane in Laos. The Prime Minister talked of India's stance on free, fair and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. All right, you're watching DD India News. We're heading for a short break. But after the break, the UN Security Council meets on Lebanon crisis after Israeli strikes on central Beirut. Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian in Turkmenistan on Friday. Over 3 million left without power as Hurricane Milton leaves a trail of destruction in Florida.
Geopolitics and trade deals, economic challenges amid development, hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News. Let's get to updates on West Asia conflict now. Fresh airstrikes hit central Beirut on Thursday as the conflict further escalated in the region. The strikes, which occurred at midnight on Thursday, hit 2 Beirut locations in the heart of the capital. Israel has repeatedly pounded Beirut's southern suburbs, the bastion of Hezbollah movement, over the last 2 weeks, but Thursday's raid was only the third time the city center has been targeted. Earlier, the UN peacekeepers said that Israeli fire on their headquarters in South Lebanon on Thursday injured 2 blue helmets. According to the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, or the UNIFIL, the Israeli strike hit an observation tower at a UN base in Nakura. UNIFIL is a UN peacekeeping mission that monitors hostilities and helps to ensure humanitarian access to civilians in southern Lebanon. The attack came on the same day as the UN's peacekeeping force in Lebanon accused Israeli soldiers of repeatedly firing on its positions. Meanwhile, condemning the recent attack, United Nations peacekeepers said that they are determined to remain at their posts in southern Lebanon despite Israeli strikes.
We know that a few days ago the IDF asked us to move from certain positions along the Blue Line. This is a known fact, and we have over 29 positions along the Blue Line, like the Irish in Maruna Ras. And we decided to stay. There was an agreement with all the troop contributing countries that it's important for the UN to be there to fly the UN flag, and we continue to monitor the situation. We are there because the Security Council has asked us to be there. So we are staying until the situation becomes impossible for us to operate.
EU Chief Charles Michel condemned the attacks on the UN peace operations. Talking to reporters on the sidelines of the Southeast Asian Summit in Laos, the European Council President said that Israeli fire on UN peacekeeper base is not acceptable.
An attack against a UN peace mission is not responsible, it's not acceptable, and that's why indeed we call on Israel and we call on all sides to fully respect the international humanitarian law.
Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto has denounced the attack, terming it as a war crime. Crosetto said that the strike was not a mistake and not an accident.
The situation in the part of Lebanon has been worrying us not since today, but what happened yesterday. And today is totally unacceptable. And there is no justification to say that the Israeli armed forces had warned UNIFIL that some of the bases had to be left. I told the ambassador to refer to the Israeli government that the United Nations and Italy cannot take orders from Israel. The United Nations and Italy are there in the act of a resolution of the United Nations, and the only way to discuss what we are doing is formally putting the issue to the United Nations, not giving orders to the free nations that are there to defend international law, to do one thing or to do another.
Leaders called for strengthening of Lebanon's army during a meeting of the 15-member Security Council. United Nations Under-Secretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, urged the conflicting parties to seize the diplomatic options put on the table before them and not the weapons by their side.
Our collective inability to stop the violence and stem the bloodshed is damning. Hezbollah and other non-state armed groups must stop firing rockets and missiles into Israel. We urge Israel to stop its bombardment of Lebanon and to withdraw its ground forces. The parties should seize the diplomatic options put on the table before them, not the weapons by their side.
While Deputy U.S. Ambassador Robert Wood said that the international community must focus its efforts on strengthening Lebanese state institutions.
We are deeply concerned by the reported injuries incurred by UN peacekeepers and are wishing them a speedy recovery. As we work to gather additional information, we have also been clear to all parties, including Israel, that we expect them to respect the safety and security of UNIFIL personnel and premises and avoid incidents that expose them to risk or harm, as well as to liaise with UN authorities to ensure UNIFIL can operate freely and in accordance with its mandate.
French UN Ambassador Nicolas de Rivère said an immediate ceasefire was needed and that a proposal for a 21-day truce put forward by France and the US last month still stands.
La voie à suivre est claire.
The way forward is clear. First and foremost, we need an immediate and lasting ceasefire in Lebanon. This is the appeal that France and the United States launched 2 weeks ago and which a number of our partners have joined. It still stands, this appeal.
Relayez cet appel.
Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense said that 20 Chinese military aircraft and 10 naval vessels were detected operating around Taiwan from 6 a.m. on Thursday to 6 a.m. on Friday. Now, according to the statement released by Taiwan's Defense Ministry, out of the 20 aircraft belonging to the People's Liberation Army, 13 crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait and entered Taiwan's northern and southwestern air defense identification zone. Now, following this, Taiwan sent aircraft and naval ships and deployed coastal-based missile systems to monitor PLA activity. Since September 2020, China has intensified its grey zone tactics by increasing the number of military aircraft and naval vessels operating around Taiwan. According to Taiwan News Report, grey zone tactics are considered an effort or series of efforts beyond steady state deterrence and assurance that attempts to achieve one's security objectives without resort to direct and sizable use of force. Russia said that leaders of 24 countries will attend this month's BRICS Summit in the Russian city of Kazan. Russian President Vladimir Putin's foreign policy aide, Yuri Yushakov, told journalists that 24 countries will be represented at leader level. He also added that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will also be present in the summit of the emerging economies. Yushakov said that leaders of 38 countries had been invited in total, with 9 sending senior officials. The summit will start with informal meetings on October 22nd, followed by the official summit on 23rd and 24th of October. Russia last hosted the BRICS Summit in 2015 in the city of Ufa. Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian in Turkmenistan on Friday. Leaders of Central Asian countries are meeting to commemorate the 300th anniversary of the birth of Pakhtim Gule Piragi, the 18th century poet and philosopher. Now, this is the first meeting between the two leaders since Iran fired missiles at Israel last week. Putin and the Iranian president are also due to meet on the sidelines of the annual summit for the BRICS Economic Group in Russian city of Kazan later this month. Earlier, Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin visited Iran last week for talks with President Pezeshkian and the first Vice President Mohammad Reza Arif. All right, turning focus to Russia-Ukraine crisis now. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Thursday held talks with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris as part of a European tour aimed at securing more Western support. Zelensky was seeking a military and financial boost during the 48-hour trip to London, Paris, Rome and Berlin, amid fears of dwindling support if Donald Trump becomes the next U.S. president. Speaking to reporters after talks with President Macron, Zelensky denied media reports that he was discussing the terms of a ceasefire with Russia, while Macron said that Zelensky had outlined Ukraine's plan for the next weeks and the pair had discussed strategy for the next weeks and months.
On the east, I understood something. As I said, the training mission for our soldiers, the brigades, we are thankful to France for this. On it depends a lot of things, especially the situation in the east, because we did not have enough rotation brigades equipped, totally equipped, 100%. So now we work with France and some other allies, and I hope in the nearest future we can count on our strong guys. So of course, big deficit with the equipment.
Big deficit with the equipment.
There are continuous commitments in terms of equipments that are following through. What was done in the last months, both in terms of defense equipment as well as training.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held talks with Italy's Giorgia Meloni in Rome on Thursday. After talks with Zelensky, Italian Prime Minister announced Rome would host the next recovery conference to help Ukraine's reconstruction. Meloni said that Rome's support was about putting Ukraine in the best possible condition to build a negotiating table for peace, a peace that cannot be a surrender.
Looking to a future of peace and prosperity, looking to a European future also means looking to reconstruction. So I am happy to take this opportunity to announce the date of the next Ukraine Recovery Conference, which will be in Rome on 10th and 11th of July 2025. It is an event that we hold dear and on which we have been working for a long time.
In other global updates, UN's humanitarian agency has warned that flooding continues to affect and displace people across South Sudan. The East African nation, highly vulnerable to climate change, is facing its worst flooding in decades. Now, according to the UN humanitarian agency, some 900,000 people have been affected by flooding in South Sudan, while more than 241,000 others were displaced. Unity and Warrap states in north of the country accounted for more than 40% of the affected population. The country also faces another period of political paralysis after the presidency announced yet another extension to a transitional period agreed in a 2018 peace deal, delaying elections that were to take place in December by another 2 years. Hurricane Milton plowed into the Atlantic Ocean on Thursday after cutting a destructive path across Florida, killing at least 16 people and leaving millions without power. Governor Ron DeSantis said that the state had avoided the worst-case scenario, though he cautioned the damage was still significant and flooding remained a concern. U.S. Homeland Security Secretary said at a White House briefing that there were reports of 10 deaths so far, adding that it appeared that they were caused by tornadoes. The storm, which arrived on Wednesday night, generated tornadoes that wreaked havoc, damaging numerous homes and infrastructure. Reports indicate that at least 19 tornadoes were spawned by the hurricane, impacting various counties and affecting over 125 homes. U.S. President Joe Biden said that he believes Congress should come back into session to address disaster relief funding needs following Hurricane Milton. Biden said that he had not spoken with House Speaker Mike Johnson on the subject.
I think Congress should move as rapidly as they can, particularly on the most immediate need, which is small business. Vice President Harris and I said yesterday, and we'll say it again, to anyone who seeks to take advantage of our fellow Americans' desperation, whether you're a company engaging in price gouging or a citizen trying to scam your neighbors, we will go after you and we will hold you accountable.
Former U.S. President and Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump criticized the federal response to the two most recent hurricanes, Helene and Milton. Trump congratulated the Republican governors of Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina on their response to Helene. Trump has sought to portray the Biden-Harris administration's response to recent storm as ineffective, including claiming without evidence that aid and Federal Emergency Management Agency funding had been diverted to the migrants.
I'd like to congratulate governors of Florida, Ron DeSantis, Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia and South Carolina, Henry McMaster. They were really hit hard and they've done really a fantastic job. The federal government, on the other hand, has not done what you're supposed to be doing. In particular, with respect to North Carolina, they've let those people suffer unjustly.
Former President Barack Obama rallied voters in Pennsylvania to support Vice President Kamala Harris ahead of the November 5th election. Speaking at the University of Pittsburgh, Obama urged young voters to oppose Donald Trump, who is running for re-election. Obama has been a strong advocate for Harris since she became the Democratic presidential candidate after President Joe Biden stepped down in July. The rally is part of several events Obama will hold in key swing states. So far, Obama has helped raise $80 million for the 2024 campaign. Michelle Obama is also expected to campaign for Harris in the coming weeks. A transport strike in Peru has paralyzed cities, forcing school closures and military assistance as crime rates surge. Public transit workers are striking to demand government action against rising crime and extortion, with markets and businesses joining the protest. The government had earlier declared a state of emergency in several Lima districts to combat organized crime. A quick look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the world. Panama has installed a water wheel trash collector to prevent plastic waste from reaching the sea. The machine, called Wanda, collects hundreds of tons of garbage flowing through rivers and separates it for recycling. The project is part of a larger effort to protect Panama's coastal environment. A rare collection of Andy Warhol's Reigning Queens has opened at a Dutch museum. The exhibit, inaugurated by Princess Beatrix, features 4 silk prints of the former Dutch queen created by Warhol in 1985. This exhibit marks a significant moment in showcasing Warhol's pop art legacy. The Northern Lights lit up the skies over England with stunning colours visible across the West Midlands on October 10th. The rare phenomena caused by solar particles interacting with Earth's magnetic field was captured by lucky spectators. The celestial display was visible as far as south parts of England. You're watching DD India News Hour. We're heading for a short break, but after the break, nomination for the upcoming general election in Sri Lanka to close at noon on Friday. Its festivities galore as Doordarshan celebrations take place across many regions in India. The angry young man of Indian cinema continues to exude charm even as he turns 82 today.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think All dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. After the break, you're watching DD India News Hour. A quick relook at the top stories now. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi attends East Asia Summit in Lao PDR, says security and stability of South China Sea is in interest of the entire Indo-Pacific region. Fresh Israeli airstrikes hit central Beirut. World leaders condemn attack on UN peacekeepers in South Lebanon. Kremlin confirms leaders of 24 countries and the UN General Secretary to attend BRICS Summit starting on October 22nd. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi participated in the 19th East Asia Summit in Vientiane, Lao PDR today. Prime Minister stressed on ASEAN's central role in India's Act East policy, the Indo-Pacific regional architecture, in Indo-Pacific vision and also in Quad cooperation. Underlining the severe impact of conflicts in Global South, Prime Minister highlighted the importance of a free, open, inclusive and rule-based Indo-Pacific. Prime Minister Modi said that conflicts across the world have major impact on countries of Global South. He also called for resolutions of conflicts in Eurasia and West Asia. Moving to South Asia now, in Sri Lanka, nomination for the upcoming general election will close at noon on Friday. The Election Commission has issued guidelines to the parties submitting national list of candidates. The poll body has advised all political parties and independent groups contesting the election to submit a list of suitable national list of nominees during the nomination period. Also, several of the major political parties contesting in the upcoming general election have submitted their nomination papers so far. According to the Election Commission, a total of 33 independent groups and political parties have already submitted nomination to contest the general election. In Nepal, 8 lakh people have so far left Kathmandu Valley by the 7th day of the Dashain celebration for their home districts to celebrate the biggest festival in Nepal. It is expected that more than 1 million passengers will exit the valley via road transport by Friday for Dashain this year. Tika celebration is on Saturday, when there is a family gathering and people visit their hometowns to celebrate the last day of Dashain. However, the number of people leaving the valley has reduced due to the disruption of roads from flooding and landslides triggered by incessant rainfall on September 27th and 28th. Meanwhile, more than 2 lakh Nepalese enter Nepal from India through the Jamunaha border crossing near Nepalganj to celebrate the Dashain festival with their families. And now we take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across India. On the 8th day of Navratri in India, devotees gathered in temples of Delhi to attend the special Aarti dedicated to Goddess Durga. The 8th day, or Durga Ashtami, holds immense significance in Sharad Navratri. It is a day of powerful prayers, fasting and devotion. Many devotees perform Kanya Puja or Kumari Puja on this day, where 9 young girls representing the 9 forms of Durga are worshipped and offered food, sweets and gifts. Devotees conducted Ram Leela in northern Indian city of Bareilly. This event, which enacts the life and adventures of Lord Ram, was conducted with great enthusiasm, attracting a large audience from across the region. The Ram Leela in Bareilly is not just a cultural celebration, but a deeply spiritual event for the local devotees. Many of them consider it as an honor and a form of devotion to play various roles in the production. They portray characters like Lord Ram, Sita, Lakshman and more. Navratri celebrations are in full swing in Ahmedabad. Devotees in large number gathered for traditional Garba performances. The city came alive with music and festive lights as people of all ages participated in this cultural extravaganza. From traditional Garba to modern fusion styles, the dance floors were packed with enthusiastic participants spinning in unison to the beats of dhol and folk songs. Ahmedabad, known for its grand Navratri celebration, is truly a sight to behold during this festive season. Specially abled artist Venkana turned a university in Hyderabad into a hub for spreading social awareness through his impactful art. The artist created a series of thought-provoking murals and installations on the campus, each addressing critical social issues like disability rights, environmental awareness, and others. Despite physical challenges, Venkana's contributions have turned the university into a vibrant space where art meets advocacy, fostering a culture of awareness and empathy. India's legendary actor Amitabh Bachchan turns 82 today. In a career spanning more than 5 decades, the angry young man has given many hits to the Indian cinema. His charm has enthralled audience on television as well as with his leading reality television show Kaun Banega Crorepati. On his birthday, we get you this special report that talks about Amitabh Bachchan's journey and achievements. Take a look.
India's legendary actor Amitabh Bachchan, who's widely famous as one of the greatest and most influential actors in the history of Indian cinema, is celebrating his 82nd birthday on the 11th of October. Amitabh Bachchan is regarded as one of India's most remarkable personalities who's enthralled and entertained the audiences across generations. Throughout his career, he has appeared in over 240 plus Indian films spanning almost 5 decades. He has won numerous awards and accolades across his career. Bachchan's career is significant for its longevity, the variety of his performances, and his contributions to Indian popular culture. Amitabh Bachchan made his career debut in 1969 as a VO artist, which won a national award. His first acting debut was with the film Saath Hindustani. He rose to fame from the film Zanjeer in the year 1973, which was turned down by many actors. With this film, he earned his first Filmfare nomination for Best Actor. After this film, he was established in a new persona.
All right, we'll get to this report in just a while, but from here we will get you the bilateral meetings, more about the bilateral meetings that the Prime Minister is having in Lao PTR. And up your screens, we will get the meeting of Prime Minister Modi with the Prime Minister of Lao PTR. Both the leaders held bilateral meeting. As we told you, Prime Minister is in Lao PTR to attend the 19th East Asia Summit. And here we see Prime Minister interacting with the leadership of Laos. The bilateral relationship between India and Lao PTR has strengthened, and both the countries have historical and civilizational links that is reflected in the common heritage of Buddhism and Ramayana. These are the visuals from Lao PTR, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with the Indian delegation, is holding talks with the Prime Minister of Lao PTR. the relationship between the two countries has been strengthening is evident of the way India's cooperation during COVID pandemic. Prime Minister held a telephonic conversation with the leadership of Laos, and the two leaders exchanged views on the health and economic challenges posed by the global pandemic. Also, India sent emergency flood relief assistance to Laos PDR in dealing with floods after Typhoon Yagi, and the Prime Minister also expressed his condolences at the forum in Laos PDR also, which caused widespread damage and affected a large number of people. So there we had the bilateral meeting of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Laos Prime Minister in Laos PDR. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Laos to attend the 19th East Asia Summit. Up next, we are heading for a short commercial break. You're watching DD India News Hour, but after the break, World Bank Board approves new Ukraine fund supported by G7 nations. West Indies registers its second win in the ongoing ICC Women's T20 World Cup. And we'll also show you the glimpses of Festival of Digital and Creative Culture being held in Prague. Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. On to business updates now. The World Bank's Executive Board on Thursday approved the creation of a financial intermediary fund to support Ukraine, with contributions expected from the US, Canada and Japan. The fund, to be administered by the World Bank, will help fulfill a pledge by a group of 7 rich democracies to provide Ukraine with up to $50 billion in additional funding by the end of the year. According to the source, exact amount to be contributed by the US, Japan and Canada are still being worked out, but will be backed by interest from frozen Russian sovereign assets. Earlier, World Bank President Ajay Banga said that he was absolutely open to the idea of managing a G7 loan fund for Ukraine backed by the earnings from frozen Russian sovereign assets, at least for the non-military purposes. Asian shares were headed for their first weekly loss in 5 on Friday, as a stunning rally in Chinese shares took a breather, although all eyes are on the details of the much-anticipated fiscal stimulus from Beijing this weekend. European stock markets are set to open slightly higher, with Euro Stoxx 50 futures and FTSE futures both up 0.2%. French bond futures rallied 33 ticks, slightly ahead of a small bounce in the US bonds, as France planned tax hikes and spending cuts to rein in its deficit. Wall Street futures were flat. Tesla opens new tab, unveiled the long-awaited showcase of an autonomous taxi in Los Angeles, which came with fanfare, but few details on timing. Production is not set to begin until 2026. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan opened a new tab, rose a subdued 0.3% on Friday, but was still set for a weekly loss of 1.7% after 4 straight weeks of gains. The Nikkei opened new tab, however, gained 0.5%, bringing its weekly rise to 2.5%. Up next, we'll get you updates from the world of sports. Off-spinner Karishma Ramharak starred with an impressive 4-wicket haul as West Indies centred to an 8-wicket victory against Bangladesh in the Women's T20 World Cup on Thursday. Ramarak's fine bowling spell of 4 for 17 from her 4 overs restricted Bangladesh to 103 for 8. With the bat, West Indies overhauled the target with as many as 43 balls to spare. Captain Hayley Matthews and Stephanie Taylor shared 52 runs for the opening wicket. before Deandra Doughton made a quick-fire 19 not out of just 7 balls with the help of 2 sixes. West Indies scored 104 for 2 in 12.5 overs to notch its second win in 3 matches and keep itself afloat for a semi-final spot. Meanwhile, for Bangladesh, captain Nigar Sultana top scored for Bangladesh with a 44 off 39, but she did not get enough support from her batting colleagues. This was Bangladesh's second loss in 3 matches. Argentina was held to a 1-each draw against Venezuela on Thursday in Lionel Messi's return to international duty in South America's World Cup qualifiers, in fact. Captain Messi has fully recovered from the injury he sustained in Copa America final against Colombia in July. The 37-year-old was brilliant in setting up Otamendi on a drenched pitch to open the scoring 13 minutes after kickoff. However, the determined Venezuelan striker equalized in the second half with an exceptional header from a Jefferson Soteldo's cross to temporarily move his team to 6th in the standings with 11 points. Argentina remains top of the standings with 19 points and will face Bolivia on Tuesday, while Venezuela will visit Paraguay. The Indian Blind Football Federation announced on Thursday that it will host the 2025 IBSA Women's Blind Football World Championship in Kerala. The landmark event from 2nd to 12th of October 2025 marks the first time India will host a Blind Football World Championship, placing the country at the heart of global blind football and spotlighting its burgeoning football community. The championship is a significant milestone for the Indian Blind Football Federation, which has been working diligently to promote and advance the para sport in India. The event is expected to draw teams from across the globe, offering a unique opportunity for India to demonstrate its capability and commitment to supporting and growing inclusive sports. Indian men's team bowled out, bowed out in the semi-finals and settled for the bronze medal following a 3-0 loss to Chinese Taipei in the semi-final of the Asian Table Tennis Championships. World number 42, Achanta Sharat Kamal, was going tough against his world number 7 opponent Lin Yanzhou, losing the contest 11-7, 12-10, 11-9. In the following contest, Manav Thakur lost to world number 22 Kao Cheng Yui in hard-fought contest. In the third game, Harmeet Desai also had to deal with disappointment as the Indian paddler lost to Huang Yan Cheng 6-11, 9-11, 7-11. Indian women's team also had won the bronze medal in the competition on Wednesday, making it the first ever medal in women's team event for India since Asian Table Tennis Union started conducting competitions in 1972. The 12th edition of the Signal Festival of Light and Video Mapping begins in Prague. All right, before we get you this, very quickly, we'll get you more on the bilateral meetings which the Prime Minister held in Laos PDR with respect to his participation at the 19th East Asia Summit. The Prime Minister held meetings with various world leaders on the sidelines of the summit. Talking of this summit, the East Asia Summit is an annual meeting of the leaders of 18 countries in East Asia and the adjacent regions. Here, the Prime Minister is seen interacting with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The 10 ASEAN member states include Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Brunei. The 8 ASEAN dialogue partners are India, China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, the US, and Russia. It was set up in 2005, the East Asia Summit, and initially it included 16 member states. So the Prime Minister there at the East Asia Summit in Laos PDR, and he was seen interacting with the other world leaders present, the other diplomats also present at the forum. And also in other news, the 12th edition of the Signal Festival of Light and Video Mapping begins in Prague. Now, the annual 4-day festival illuminates Prague's historic monuments, streets and parks, and for the first time, the Prague Castle also. Take a look. And as we told you earlier in the bulletin also, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi participated in the 19th East Asia Summit in Vientiane, Laos PDR today. Prime Minister stressed on ASEAN's central role in India's Act East policy, the Indo-Pacific regional architecture, and also in the Indo-Pacific vision and in Quad cooperation. And here, the Prime Minister is holding a bilateral meeting with the Thailand Prime Minister, Thongloun Sisoulith. I beg your pardon, the Prime Minister is holding a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister of Thailand, Ms. Pentongtom Shinawatra. This is the meeting which the Prime Minister is holding with Thai Prime Minister Shinawatra on the sidelines of the East Asia Summit in Laos PDR. And since morning, we have been updating you about the Prime Minister's engagements in Laos. The Prime Minister earlier met the Prime Minister of Laos also. Prime Minister Siphodon and Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a bilateral meeting earlier. And here on our screens, we can see Prime Minister being greeted by Prime Minister of Thailand, Shinawatra. And both the leaders are holding bilateral meeting in Laos PDR on the sidelines of the East Asia Summit. All right, so this is part of the bilateral engagements the Prime Minister is holding in Laos PDR on the sidelines of the 19th East Asia Summit. The East Asia Summit was set up in 2015, the first edition in 2005, in fact. In 2005, the first edition of the East Asia Summit was held. All right, from here we will again get you more from Laos PDR, where Prime Minister is meeting world leaders and a photo op is taking place on the sidelines of the East Asia Summit, the 19th India East Asia Summit. In fact, the 19th East Asia Summit that is being held in Laos PDR. Prime Minister there participating at the summit, and the Prime Minister took part at the ASEAN Summit, wherein he presented a 10-point plan for boosting tourism and green energy, and there were also other areas of cooperation that were mentioned. And the Prime Minister also held bilateral meetings with other world leaders on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit. MOUs being signed, and also The Prime Minister just a while back also held a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Thailand.
Prasar Bharati, Ambassador of India to the Lao PDR, and His Excellency Beirut Sundara, Director General, Asia Pacific and Africa Department, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Lao PDR. Thank you, Excellencies. We next have an exchange of the MOU on cooperation of broadcasting between Prasar Bharati and Lao National Television. The next exchange will be done by Ambassador of India to the Lao PDR and Dr. Amka Bongmunka, Director General, Lao National Television. Thank you, Excellencies. The next MOUs exchange are on quick impact projects under the Mekong Ganga cooperation. The exchange will be done by Ambassador of India to the Lao PDR and Mr. Sombun Sihanat, Director General, Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Lao PDR, Song Leader of Mekong Ganga cooperation for the Lao PDR. Excellencies, we have now come to the end of the MOU's exchange ceremony. Thank you.
So this was the live coverage we were getting for you from Laos, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Laos, Sonxay Siphandone, and both the leaders held bilateral talks, and after that MOUs were signed. This is on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit, which the Prime Minister attended in Laos PDR. And also, when we talk of a quick gist of the Prime Minister's participation at the ASEAN Summit, the Prime Minister presented a 10-point plan for boosting tourism and green energy. There were other areas of cooperation also that were discussed. On your screens also we showed you special graphics which talked of the Prime Minister's 10-point agenda. And that was the gist of Prime Minister's engagements in Laos. Remember, the Prime Minister is there. He attended the ASEAN Summit, and during the day, in the bulletins that follow, we'll get you other highlights of the Prime Minister's bilateral meetings, which he held with other leaders as well. As of now, that's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app, and you can download the respective QR codes. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.